Today's presentation is on pranayama or life energy control. But to be more specific, what I'm talking about here is Hanuman, one of the biggest characters known all over the world and the most important, if not the most important character in the Ramayana who helped Ram and Lakshman win the war against Ravan. So today we're going to talk about Hanuman and how he relates to pranayama and life energy control. But before we do that, just remember that Ramayana Decoded, if you wish to see any of our content, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will find us on Zoom, where we do free webinars, Facebook, Instagram, and also Thinktree Hub, based in the United Kingdom, who accredit our Kriya level courses. So we offer a number of things for free. The Kriya Yoga meditation lessons are not entirely free. They are available via donation only of your choice. The YouTube channel, weekly 30-minute live webinar sessions, Instagram, Facebook posts. Also, I am a subject matter expert with Thinktree Hub, and there is a digital book coming towards the end of 2020, which will have a lot of content which I have not put out into social media, and it will be very, very interesting for you to read that. We also have a WhatsApp satsang group, and only a very small percentage of people who request to go into that group are added based more on whether they are taking the lessons or not. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about the story of a legend, Hanuman, and the Sundarakhand, which is one of the most exciting chapters of the Ramayana. And in Sundarakhand is when Hanuman really starts coming out as a character in terms of character development, but we also begin to see his relationship and how that relationship unfolds and develops with Ram and Lakshman over the course of the build up to the battle against Ravan, fighting against Ravan and his army in Lanka, and then going back to Ayodhya after winning the war and bringing Sitama back from the Ashok Vatika. So who and what is Hanuman? It's a very, very big question. And firstly, I think we should talk about Hanuman being a Vanar. And in a lot of the artistic work that you see, he is portrayed to being someone very closely associated to a monkey, which is how he is most generally kind of associated to. However, Hanuman is not a monkey. The Hanuman and his type of people were known as Vanars. And when the Sanskrit word Vanar is broken down to its Sanskrit root and decoded, it actually comes to mean people who dwell within the forest or dwell within nature mainly. And these people were strict vegetarians, very spiritually, technologically advanced, and they were massive. They were huge, they were very strong, and they were very big. And they were very focused and very logical, and they were able to obviously go to war against Ravan and his army and ultimately win. So even though a lot of artistic work and sources of information will portray Hanuman and the Vanars as monkeys, it's very important to understand that they were not monkeys in the way that me and you have seen monkeys in our modern times. Who is Hanuman and what is Hanuman? Hanuman at a very kind of spiritual level, and in my previous webinars, I went through this whole process of 3 levels of interpretation: Adi Bautik, which is the physical story; Adi Devik, which is the astro spiritual science; and Adi Atmic. I'm not going to touch on the Adi Atmic in this webinar, in this presentation today, because that is more to do with the Kriya Yoga techniques, which are also taught in the Kriya Yoga lessons, which refer to things like Mahamudra. However, on the screen over here, you can see the picture on the right-hand side, which shows Hanuman over here burning Lanka. And one of the practices known as Mahamudra is a practice in which you esoterically, internally within your body, you start to burn the Muladhara chakra, or the center of consciousness right at the bottom of the spine, where the mundane ego and lust and basic sustenance of life happens. Once you start burning that, then things internally begin to change. But we're not really here to talk about that, although I will refer to it throughout this presentation. So Hanuman, as I said at the beginning, is very closely related to pranayama. And pranayama is one of these terms which in our modern times has been taken out of context, and it is advertised and touted as something which is related to breath control. Pranayama is breath control, but at the same time, it's not breath control. When you break down the words pranayama, it ultimately means life energy or soul energy control. It's a very, very subtle energy which sustains your life, you as a physical human being. So, for example, if you were to take a dead body and put food and water into that body and lay it under the sunshine, that body is not going to come to life. That body is not going to become a sentient human being because there is no life energy or soul energy within that particular physical body. And this is where the whole practice of Kriya Yoga, which is known as the lightning path to self realization, comes in, because Kriya Yoga makes you realize through certain practices, certain yogic practices, how and why your body is actually living and sustaining. And one of those things is to understand and appreciate that behind your power, behind your willpower, your actions, and your thoughts, there is an even greater power which is allowing you to do that. And that one of those aspects is life energy or soul energy. Now, Kriya Yoga is based around being able to lift your awareness or your consciousness from the surface of your body and your mind, and then reverse that energy back up through the spine, which we call in Vedic terms as the Shushumna, through the various chakras or centers of consciousness, and place your entire awareness and your consciousness at the point between the eyebrows, the Kutasa, also known as Ayodhya, where also sits the Agna Chakra, or the third eye of intuition. So Hanuman, as I said, is related to pranayama, and pranayama is related to life energy control. Now, in order to control life energy, you have to go through the bridge. And the bridge here, or the link here, is the breath, because the very first act of life and the very last act of life is the breath. Therefore, the breath has something very important to do with life. Now, when you take in breath, when you take in oxygen, you're bringing in what we call pran energy. And there are 49 Pacific life force energies, or different types of airs. That's how they can be described in modern day English language, for example. But what these really are, if I can explain, is more kind of subtle energies which are operating within and without us that allow us to perform certain acts. And these energies, these specific life force energies, are also the same kind of technology and understanding that was used in the ancient, very advanced aerial technology, which is also mentioned in the Ramayana, known as the Vimanas. They also use a very kind of similar concept in order to control and build and fly those machines. So the breath is very, very closely associated to life energy. And what happens is when you take in breath, you're taking in oxygen. That oxygen then bursts into life energy and sustains through the blood, providing your body, your tissues, and your organs with oxygen, which is pumped throughout your whole entire body. And then what happens is that any kind of waste blood, in terms of dark venous blood, that you have is then pumped back into the heart, replenished, and then or purified, and then sent back out. And that's continually done through the breath. Now, the more dark venous blood you have within your body, the more your heart needs to pump. Now, this is also one of the reasons why Hanuman, when it comes to the chakras, can be related to the Anahata chakra, which is the heart chakra, because Hanuman is related to Man, which is mind, which is also related to the heart chakra. and your mind is very closely associated to the way you breathe. So, for example, if you have, if you're going through a traumatic experience or you feel angry, then your breath is usually very sharp, very deep, very short, and very forceful. And your heartbeat and your breathing pattern is very similar. But when you're more calm and collective, for example, when you're sleeping and you've internalized your senses, then your heartbeat is generally much slower and your breathing is much slower. And the practice of pranayama, life energy control through the breath, is exactly that. It's being able to consciously start taking control of your life energy through the breath by having more control, more awareness over the heart. Now, there's some people that will say, well, how can you take control of the involuntary nervous system within the body? These scientific Grey Yogic techniques are not just techniques which are just written, but they are scientific, and there are various steps that you would have to follow in order for yourself to be able to understand and appreciate that these techniques do work. And it can also be proven from a scientific point of view with regards to brainwave patterns, but we'll talk about that in a different presentation. So, as I was saying, that pranayama is closely related to Hanuman, and Hanuman is closely related to the mind, and the mind is closely related to your breath, and your breath ultimately then goes back into loop, and we say it's ultimately related to life energy. Hanuman actually means to kill the mind or to dissolve the mind, which is also what you're trying to do, because your mind is one of the most powerful tools that you have, and your mind exists within you and without you. It exists everywhere. Now, specifically on your body and your organs, it consists in various different parts. It can consist within the brain, and then it depends on whether it's sitting with what we call manas, the lymphic part of the brain, where you make emotional decisions, or is the mind sitting there with buddhi, the prefrontal lobe, where you make human rational executive decisions, which is the front, which ironically is also where the Agna Chakra sits between the eyebrows, or where we also, as Valmiki had described it, Ayodhya, between the point between the eyebrows. Your mind can also sit within your heart, and your mind can also sit within your gut. This is the reason why, if you, for example, let's take the gut, you do a 24-hour fast and eat only one light meal, vegetarian meal, every 24 hours, you will actually come to realize that the vast majority of the time you are eating because your mind is telling you that you need to eat, but your body doesn't really need it, unless, of course, your body is going through some sort of physiological change or you're feeling dizzy. Then it's really important that you eat the right types of food to bring your body back into some sort of equilibrium. But the vast majority of the time, most people are programmed that they have to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, this is the reason why the yogis who are very serious on a very serious adi atomic path of spiritual interpretation, what we call the real interpretation of Ramayana, which is the internal journey of the soul, they have a very light and sometimes no diet at all in terms of eating foods. But that's a very, very advanced kind of spiritual discussion there. Your mind can also sit within the heart, and it is said that your heart is able to make more of, let's say, better decision, more value adding decision for you and your life journey than your brain does. Because even though if your mind is operating from buddhi, from the what we call the prefrontal lobe part of the brain, your brain ultimately is encased within this dark environment behind the skull, and it tries to make sense of the information that it has been fed through your five senses, which are imperfect because they can only pick up on 0.4% of the atoms that create everything around you. And then what your brain does is try to make rational decisions based on all that information. And when you start throwing in things like your emotions, your likes, your desires, people you like, people you hate, people you're not particularly fond of, there's going to be turning out some sort of answer which is going to be relevant only to that particular information. This is the reason why everybody has their own version of reality. My version of reality is going to be different to your version of reality purely based on the experiences and events that you have gone through and the way we look at life. For example, the way we look at dharma. And again, dharma itself is a massive topic and one which we can explore in a different presentation. So, in a kind of very shortened version, that is what pranayama, life energy control, is. And this technique is taught within the Kriya Yoga lessons, should you wish to take them up, which are available via donation only. So Hanuman has many powers, and there are 8 particular siddhis which are spoken of within the Ramayana. And I'm just going to go through them very, very quickly because these siddhi powers are only ever given to people who have very intensive sadhana. And, we're talking people like Mahathar, Babaji, that scale of consciousness and spiritual development. These are things like what Hanuman was able to do, make his body either very large or very small. He could become infinitely heavy. He could become very, very light. He had the ability to be anywhere at will. He could create and control things um, just through the power of his mind. And he was able to have control over people in certain situations. And there's around 8 of these particular types of siddhi powers, which I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail because they are more associated to a very higher and advanced level of Kriya Yoga practice. So that, my friends, is a very shortened and very kind of to the point version of pranayama, life energy control, related to the great Hanuman of the Sundarakand. And there are many, many parts of this story that we can explore, from black holes and wormholes talked about in the Ramayana, to crossing the ocean from the south of India to Lanka, burning Lanka, what that means, creating the Rama Setu bridge, how Hanuman is related to that in terms of the chakra system or the centers of consciousness. And it all comes back and relates to one thing. It all comes back and relates to the internal practice of self-realization. So thank you very much for listening. And please remember that Ramayana Decoded are available on YouTube, Thinktree, Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, and we offer all of these chunks of information. The vast majority of it is free, unless it's the book over here, which there will be a cost associated, and the Kriya Yoga meditation lessons, which I can only make available through a donation basis only. Thank you very much.